Hi everyone, and welcome to this session. Kari here is going to talk about Gi Effektivt, Give Effectively in Norwegian, from student projects to 100 million Norwegian kroners yearly to effective charities. Kari is going to take some questions from the audience after this talk, and you can submit that through the Swapcard app. You need to go to the app and then to this event, then you press live discussions, and there's a place for questions. You can also upvote other questions, so you bump them up the line, so it's more likely that we'll get to them. Kari will also have office hours after this talk, straight after this talk, in the discussion space, like across the venue. So if you want to ask her more questions afterwards, please do go and join her there. Okay, so let's say hello to Kari. Kari Kjørholt is a material engineer from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. She is also a former board member of EA Norway. This year, she quit her engineering job to join Gi Effektivt and is now the managing director. Give a warm welcome to Kari.
Hi everyone, and thank you Maria for the good introduction. My name is Kari, and as Maria just said, I'm the new managing director of Gi Effektivt. Came into EA about midway through 2020 through the student group at NTNU, my university, and have just got more and more engaged since. So then I quit my engineering job and started with Gi Effektivt in February. Gi Effektivt is a project that was first started by this same student group, but has now grown to be a successful and even more ambitious project. I'll tell you a bit about our path there, how we're doing now, and how we plan to get to our ambitious goal. First, though, I'll give you the very quick Gi Effektivt elevator pitch, just so we're all on the same side. As most of you probably know, too many people are still dying from diseases that we could easily treat. And there are effective measures, but many people don't know about them, and money is a bottleneck for scaling up. So what we do is we help people in Norway get or do the most good for their donations. We are not only an independent service that gives advice about how to give effectively, but we also make it simple to do so through Norwegian checkout methods. We do this 100% free of charge, which means that we also cover all transaction costs, for example, and our donations to us are eligible for tax deductions. So, this is part of the group from EA NTNU that started the project back in 2015. Tax deductions was a motivation for them to start, because they had seen some barriers against donating to and promoting charities in Norway. And they figured that if they could create an organization, get it approved for tax deductions, and donate through that organization, it could be helpful. So a lot of work was put in voluntarily through 2015, spring and summer. And they had to also had to fundraise 100,000 kroners as capital to be able to start a foundation in Norway, and they had to fundraise some money for Maria's salary. She was the first managing director of Gi Effektivt. But they managed to do so, and got the money from 2 students mostly that donated a lot of their money from their summer jobs. So in cooperation with the EA group at the University of Oslo, the Effect Foundation was established at the end of 2015. 2016 was the first full year of fundraising. And there seemed to be a market for this, because over the next few years, also people outside of the EA community started donating to through Gi Effektivt. And as you can see here, the growth was quite significant over the years. So the donation volume grew to be about 6.4 million Norwegian kroners by 2020. And if you need context for this, 10 Norwegian kroners is about $1, so just divide by 10. Yeah, and this was almost exclusively done by volunteers. When we then came to the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, there was we had a proof of concept basically for this, and there was opportunity and an ambition to really scale up. So from the 6.4 million that we raised in 2020, we found that we wanted to scale up to 100 million Norwegian kroners per year by 2025. It's ambitious, but it meant that we would need to grow about 70% yearly, which was not that much more than what we'd grown in the previous years. So it was doable. That would mean that we would save more or less 2,000 lives every year if we reached the 100 million. And how would we do this? We decided on 5 key focus areas that we thought would position us best to get us to that number. First one, we thought that we needed a platform that would scale. If you're going to do 100 million, you're going to have a lot of donors, and you can't do much manual work. They had done a lot of manual work in the beginning, and the first solutions were quite simple with spreadsheets and manual follow-up. And that worked well on a low scale. And we also wanted to focus on user experience. Because we thought that if donors come to our page and they have a good experience, they're more likely to actually make the first donation, they're more likely to return, and they're more likely to recommend this to other people. A second barrier to our donation volume growing was that people hadn't actually heard about us. So we needed to be more visible. We also thought that there was potential in the group of high net worth individuals, or major donors, as we also call them. And we wanted to use ambassadors. So an ambassador is someone that we define as a person with a large or a valuable network. And that these people could talk to others about us and share our ideas with their network. And last of all, just to keep the organization healthy, we wanted to focus on having sustainable operations, which meant having our finances in order and having happy employees. So this ambitious plan also required some professionalizing. And the first 2 employees of Gi Effektivt were hired back in early 2021. So this is Jørgen. He was the first full-time managing director. And then Erik was the creative lead. During this first year, a major part of what we did was this big rebranding process. I'm not going to say too much about it now, because I just did a talk about it earlier today. But it basically took us from this incoherent platform put together by volunteers over years to a brand that was recognizable and was more coherent with what we wanted to communicate, which was rationality, a scientific mindset, and the fact that we were independent and wanted to give advice. So here you see some elements that ended up being part of the rebranding. And it also took us from a platform that didn't have a very good user experience to one that we can now be proud of, and a brand that more clearly stands out. This is our current team. So in addition to me, there is Håkon, tech lead. Elisa is our web designer. Ole, communications advisor, and Ruth works with operations. In addition to this, we also get great value from the work that our board does and our volunteers. We have, the last year we've had more or less 20 volunteers participate, quite a lot. Gives us great value. I should also say that Effective Altruism Norway is our administrative partner, and they help us a lot with a lot of basic things that we need just to function as an organization. For example, all our employees are legally hired in EA Norway. Let's have a look at where we are right now. So between 2020 and 2021, we managed to grow an amazing 91%. So then we ended up at 12.2 million. No, yeah. But last year, unfortunately, we didn't have quite the growth that we'd hoped for, 44%, and ended up at 17.7 million. But still, and we don't really know exactly why that is, but we think it could have something to do with Ukraine and the war and a lot of talk about inflation in the media, though it's quite uncertain. This year, though, we're still ambitious, and our goal is to reach 32 million. That requires 80% growth from last year. And so far this year, we've raised approximately 6.7 million. Because of most of our funds come in quite late in the year, that still means that we've grown almost 150% compared to this time last year, though. So we're on a good track. And we also had quite a major milestone in March, where we passed 50 million kroners to effective charities all time. Very excited about that. Along the way, we've learned a few things, and I thought I'd share a few tips with you now. As I said previously, we've had a lot of great volunteers. But in addition to these 20 volunteers that have worked with us over the past year, many more have been in contact with us and have been involved. And we see that it's difficult to predict which volunteers end up being extremely valuable and which ones quit working for us after quite a short time. The volunteers that are most valuable are the ones that are independent and don't require too much overhead. And one thing that we've done, which is quite specific, is that we still want to onboard volunteers because we don't know who's going to be super valuable. But we've created this standardized onboarding process to make it easier for us to do this. We also see that some volunteers can take on more overhead than they require. For example, right now we have this data analysis project, and one of our volunteers leads that project, and then allows us to free up some resources from our core team. The volunteers also have a varying capacity. It makes sense. They're not full-time hired. So we've seen that independent projects definitely work best. It also gives less overhead, and I think it gives some ownership to the projects. Many volunteers are also volunteering for us, not because they want to do something meaningful, but also because they want to be part of a community. So there are a couple things we do to help with that community feeling. For example, we have weekly volunteer meetings on Thursdays where people can show up if they want to. And I also write weekly updates on Slack to make sure that everyone is in the loop about what's going on in the broader Gi Effektivt project, not just in their specific work area. The second thing that we have learned is that the served content seems to work as better marketing for us than paid commercials. So we've tried a bit of different paid commercials. We've had some podcast commercials which have been native, which we think is generally better, and the hosts have been within our target group as well. We've tried LinkedIn commercials targeted towards our core target group, and we've also had ads in the biggest financial newspaper. Like this one that you see here is one of them. We did 5 in December of 2022. And we were quite happy with them, but we can't really see a big return on that investment. Based on certain estimates, we see that the return on investment for these types of things is around 1, and given the opportunity cost that we have, we would like it to be much, much higher. What we have seen has worked is newspaper ads or newspaper articles about people that are related to Gi Effektivt. And this is a bit of an extreme example, but Eirik Mofas, who's on our board, he was elected Young Leader of the Year last year in this same financial newspaper. And he talks a bit about Gi Effektivt and his choice to give away 20% of his income over his lifetime. This became the most read article in that newspaper for a couple years, I think. And we know for sure that a lot of people have started giving because of him and started giving effectively. Of course, not every article is this impactful, but this is where we see a lot of potential. We haven't completely given up on paid marketing though, because you can't always get an article when you want to. But now we're leaning much more towards looking for the very best opportunities to be able to do it. And there's this new EA organization called Good Impressions that are also looking into how paid commercials can be used for fundraising, and we're definitely follow their results when they come out. The last tip I'll go through is that we've been very successful with Facebook fundraisers. So during November and December, a lot of our supporters fundraise for us on Facebook. We've been very successful with this, even more than many of the biggest aid organizations, where even if people have fundraisers, they might end up not raising a single dollar, really. And the reason why we think we are successful with it is because we are quite good at encouraging our supporters to do these, and we follow up and give them tips and tricks about how to have successful fundraisers. This doesn't bring in that much money for us, but it is a huge way to be exposed to new donors. So last year was about 5% of the donation volume, but about half of our donors. And this year we want to do even more to help people and to lower the barrier for arranging fundraisers. One thing that we could get better at here is probably finding out how good we are at converting these donors, Facebook donors, into recurring donors, and what we can do to turn more of them. Yeah, so we have professionalized and we're ready for the growth in the coming years. I'm going to share a couple of specific things that we're going to do to reach the goals. The first one is that we want to increase the media outreach, get more articles about us. We know that works. To focus on the major donors, we want to hire a philanthropic advisor that can lead that work, which is now mostly done by volunteers, because we think there's big potential in that segment. We want to build a toolbox for ambassadors that can be even more help for these Facebook fundraisers, but also give them the tools they need to talk to others about us, make them more comfortable with doing it, and giving them new opportunities or ways to do it. And a last specific thing we want to do is to follow up donors more and maybe even diversify the follow-up. However, we are quite open to changing this if we learn something new and see that there's something we can do better. Lastly, I just want to remind you that this started out as a student project. The solutions in the beginning, they weren't perfect, but they certainly worked. And the people that started this didn't have any formal experience within that area. And I would just want to remind you that if they hadn't started it, if they had been stopped by the lack of formal experience, Gi Effektivt wouldn't have been saving hundreds of lives every year like they do today. So if you have an idea or you want to start something, just go for it. Worst case, you'll learn something. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kari. If you have any questions for Kari, please add them to Subcard right now. That would be awesome. Or you can also raise your hand. I'll start with one. You said that the volunteers that kind of worked the best did independent projects. Can tell me a little bit more. What is an independent project, and what are the other things that they could do that wasn't working that well, that is not independent projects?
Yeah. So one example is this data analysis project, where they have a look at our donor data and basically just try to answer questions that we have that are needed as support for strategic decisions. And the reason why it doesn't require that much involvement from the team is because they're already quite up to speed on these things. And of course, Håkon, our tech lead, needs to support at sometimes, but it's just way more efficient than if he would do the whole thing himself. I think what wouldn't work as much or as good is if there was something that was quite time dependent and the volunteers didn't have time to follow up and we needed to be a lot of back and forth, then that could end up just causing more trouble than it would help, really.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah, I see one. I'll bring you the mic.
Hello, I'm a student from Helsinki University, and yeah, just a question that we want to ask is like, I checked the website that your organization give the donation directly to the organization that need the donation, like without any cost, without taking anything of it. So yeah, my question is simple, so how does your organization cover the operating costs then?
How do we cover the operating costs?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So we were started by some support from the Center for Effective Altruism through the Infrastructure Fund, and then we also had, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but the donation from one major donor that wanted to give us operational funding as well, because they thought that by helping us grow, they could get even more for their money than by just giving it directly to GiveWell charities. And that's an approach that we still have. We try to be more and more independent and have a variety of donors. So we have some money coming in from small donors, we have several major donors, and then we still have some CA funding.
Awesome. That was what we have time for. I give Kari a warm hand of applause. And if you want to talk more with her, she'll have office hours right after this in the discussion space. We'll walk right over there now. So please join us if you want to talk more with her. Yeah.
Thank you.